Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
This is Bloomberg Businessweek. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine, plus global business, finance, and tech news. The Bloomberg Businessweek podcast with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec from Bloomberg Radio.
As Tim mentioned earlier, Boeing definitely on our mind today. It's actually up about 1.3% here. It did release its third annual safety report today, saying it's teaming up with its largest union, labor union, and the Federal Aviation Administration to review safety issues reported by employees. It's part of a broader effort to address concerns about the company's safety culture. FAA Administrator Michael Whitaker saying in an interview on on Good Morning America yesterday, that it will take time for Boeing to right its ship. Take a listen.
We've been working closely with them the last 90 days on what that plan is going to look like. It's to bring the quality back where it needs to be at their factories. It's to bring the safety system where it needs to be and bring the culture where it needs to be so that employees can speak up when they see something that is concerning. What we are seeing next week is the plan going forward. It's not the end of the process, it's the beginning, and it's going to be a long road to get Boeing back where they need to be making safe airplanes.
All right, that is FAA Administrator Michael Whitaker. That was in an interview on Good Morning America yesterday.
We should note the stock is down more than 30% so far this year. It took a big dive yesterday after it said it expects a net cash burn for the year. For more on all of this and more, we turn to Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Aerospace, Defense, and Airlines Analyst George Ferguson, who joins us from New Jersey. George, good to see you this afternoon. FAA Administrator Michael Whitaker says it's a long road. How long do you think it will be? And you know, what's the duration and the durability of that recovery here?
So thanks for having me on. So I think it's, is it a forever road? It's, wow. Right. I think safety, quality are going to have to be sort of the two North Stars in Boeing's universe. And, you know, given the amount of scrutiny they're under because of the problems they've had, people are going to be watching them very closely for some time. But I think that, you know, as they continue to increase, or as they look to increase rate, if they go to the 38 they're looking for by the end of the year on the 737 per month, and as they move towards rates that will be in the 50s, which were similar to what they were pre-pandemic, the big challenge will be getting to those higher rates, pushing the supply chain, you know, to bring that amount of componentry to the factory floor, and pushing their employees to putting it together correctly, so it's a safe product all the way, right? And it remains challenging, right? Because you got to keep moving to these higher rates and do it well. So I don't think, you know, I think this ever stops, right? The most important thing is for them to be building, again, quality, safe products, and it just gets more difficult as you crank up the number that you're building. So forever.
Yeah, I want safe planes, no doubt about it. And I feel like lived through an era where we're like, what Boeing plane are you flying on? Like, it's just interesting how we talk about this kind of things. The cash burn, though, the longer this goes on for Boeing to kind of get it right, George, financially, I mean, I don't know, like, what's the strains? What's that financial picture? Can they financially get through this on their own? Does the government need to step in? I don't know. How are you thinking about that?
And that can't last forever, right? And
right.
So I don't know that it was a huge surprise to many people in the marketplace that Boeing wasn't going to get to cash flow positive this year. Mm-hmm. It frankly seemed to us to be a bit of a stretch when they disclosed it previously. I will say that they came to the market for the $10 billion bond deal in the last couple of weeks. The market seemed very, very receptive. It was well oversubscribed. But you can't keep doing that forever because, again, the credit folks are going to get concerned after a while about continuing to feed your cash needs. Really, Boeing had a very sort of hockey stick-like projection, we'd say, in the business for the back end of 2024, where they would get themselves back to the 38 builds per month on the 737, which is the cash flow generator by the end of the year. Again, I don't think the marketplace would be surprised if that doesn't happen. But I think as you get into 2025, you need to be moving back into those upper 30s, 40s rates. So you starting to generate cash and stabilize the business. And I think they've got the cash they need to get there at this point, right?
Okay.
But I think if that timetable starts to slip and slips, materially slips into mid-year next year, there'll be a lot more questions about it. So, I mean, I think
George,
go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just struck that you said that you weren't caught off guard yesterday by those comments from Boeing about not being cash flow
Investors
positive.
certainly were.
Exactly. Investors were. The market was totally
Yeah.
taken aback. The stock tanked 7.5%. It was its worst day since January. What did the market not see that you saw?
Well, I mean, look, there's still a lot of analysts on the street that have buys in Boeing, and I think are still believing everything management says, right? And I think management is doing their best right now, but most of the time when management comes out and tells us something, the timetables are too compressed, in our view. And so, and look, I think 7% is a bad day, but yeah, Boeing's down, 30% on the year. So yeah, I don't know. It was a surprise for some, but I don't know that everybody was that surprised.
Hey, what about the news last night that it stopped delivering planes to China after it just kind of had gotten, just months after ending, I think it was a 5-year hiatus, that they've stopped again delivering to customers in China. I mean, that's an important market. I mean, I don't need to tell you that. I'm like saying, Captain Obvious over here. But I mean, what's the significance of that?
No, it's a very important market, and a lot of Boeing's inventory, airplanes that are already built and ready for delivery, this shadow factory, that CEO Dave Calhoun talked about getting rid of by the end of the year. A lot of that needs to get delivered into China, and so it's super important. But as I read it, it was about lithium batteries, I believe, in some of the black boxes. Mm-hmm. I read it yesterday. Could be off a little bit because it was small. My guess is that they'll get around that issue. They ought to get around that issue, within, I would hope, days, but maybe it'll take weeks or a month. And then they can continue to get that shadow factory delivered out, right? And I think that's a big drag on Boeing. So I didn't think the issue was that large. China is very important to us too. I think we're really going to take a very close look at once the shadow factory is delivered, once those airplanes that are already built for China and sent over there, are complete, whether China comes back in for more Boeing orders and deliveries. Prior to the pandemic, China was 300 737s or A320s per year. They were a very sizable part of the narrow body market, as we call it. Last year, they took about 80. China is going through some growth issues right now. They haven't been taking the same number of airplanes. The question is, will that market become as important? And will Boeing be a big portion of that market? And I think those are two questions that are open. I don't think China's bouncing back to 300 a year, even in 2025. I think we're pushed further than that.
And you're right. The halt stems was requested by the Civil Aviation Administration of China. They wanted additional info related to batteries used in cockpit voice recorders. So that came out at that Wolf Research Conference from the CFO over at Boeing. Hey,
George, before we let you go, I know we're going to go there, and it has to do with the head of the company. The company's still looking for a CEO at this point, Boeing that is. Can you give us not any update on who you think it will be necessarily? Nobody knows that. But what about internal versus external? Or maybe some names if you want to give them to us.
Yeah, so I don't know that I'm very good with names on this, right? I think a lot of us in the marketplace are poring over names. The challenge here is that I think Boeing needs a proven CEO with manufacturing, prowess, manufacturing, real manufacturing skill. And I guess part of me wonders if there are many of those left in America, right? Larry Culp keeps coming to mind. Lots of the CEOs seem to be more focused on financials. I feel like that's the reason why they won't go internal, because I feel like Boeing has lost that culture and need to regain it. And there's some great manufacturers, I guess, still in America, but maybe not as many as we used to have. There's some in the Midwest, like Cat and Deere and companies like that. Yeah. I wonder if they're going to go to old industrial manufacturing company like that,
Right.
and go pluck away either a CEO. But I think we need a rock star here. I don't think this is an up and coming person that's going to try their hand at the factory floor. I think this has to be a rock star, and that's why it's such a difficult decision, and people are finding it really hard to find a great name on this.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. Hey, listen, thanks. Have a great weekend. Really good holiday weekend. Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Aerospace, Defense, and Airlines Analyst George Ferguson. George, thank you so much. All right, Boeing shares, as we mentioned, just up about 1% actually in today's session, but down 7.5% yesterday.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Businessweek podcast. Catch us live weekday afternoons from 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern. Listen on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app, or watch us live on YouTube.
So Tim and I joke sort of, but are kind of serious.
It's not a joke.
It's not a joke. When we say that this may be the drug that fixes so much that ails us, if you can get it, as the supply chain is definitely stressed. We are talking about the GLP-1 class of weight loss drugs.
Some new findings today from Novo Nordisk when it comes to kidney disease. Meantime, Lilly spending billions to boost production of a key ingredient for its weight loss and diabetes shots. Talk about a trend in our society and in our investment world. Here is our reporter busy on this beat. We've got her with us in the Bloomberg studio. Bloomberg News health reporter Madison Muller. She's with us right now. What are you going to say, Carol?
Well, I want to ask you, do you feel like just things are coming at you constantly when it comes to this beat?
Yeah, it's unexpected that like I could be so focused on one area of healthcare and it be so busy all the time. Like most of the other people are healthcare reporters, cover like many different things, but for me lately it's just been obesity drugs all the time. And there's so much news like constantly, every week, every day, something is happening.
Okay, let's talk about some of the recent news. I want to start with the Novo and the kidney disease news, because I don't have the list in front of me, but it seems like every few weeks we talk to you about some sort of new ailment that preliminary research at least suggests that this could help.
Right. And we kind of got a hint of this last year when Novo stopped a trial early and the market went crazy. It was a trial in kidney disease, and the stopping early sort of indicated that there were some successful results. We didn't really know anything. They didn't say anything about it. They just said they were stopping the trial early, and like the market reacted to that. So I think there was already some anticipation that these results were going to be good, and they were, and they showed that, you know, there is another possible indication. You know, obviously it's not approved in kidney disease yet, but like we've talked about, metabolic disease, obesity, diabetes are very closely linked to other health conditions like heart disease, kidney disease, liver disease. So it's not entirely a surprise that it would help with kidney disease, but, you know, it's like we were talking about, this is the first time we've had a medication that helps this much with weight loss, that is this effective in weight loss, this effective really in diabetes too. And so it's helping with all of these other conditions as well.
Well, so, and that's what I'm curious about is that, I don't know if we're having some problems. Are we having some technical problems? No. Okay. Maybe it's just in my IFB.
It's in your head, Carol. The technical problems are with you.
The list is long. Madison, I guess, does it always just come down to, we were talking before we got started, that we're just finding out a very simplistic but important idea that, and you have to be so careful because I know weight is sometimes a real struggle for a lot of individuals, that being thinner is healthier. Does it come down to that, or is there something really special in this medication that is doing something else? Or is it really just about helping us lose weight?
I mean, I think it's twofold. So we know that, you know, for people that are overweight, people that have obesity, losing weight is good for their health. And I mean, in people with type 2 diabetes, controlling blood sugar also can help prevent these other health issues from happening. But at the same time, scientists do think that there is some weight loss independent effect that might be happening. And if you look at that SELECT trial, that huge heart disease trial, I think the data came out like a few months ago or last year. We've talked about it on the show before. One of the things that scientists are pointing to is the fact that like almost immediately, you know, in the two different patient populations, those that were taking the drug, those that weren't, like a week into the trial or something, before there was even any weight loss, you can see this split with the group that's taking the drug versus the group that's not. Like the group that was taking it was already seeing reduction in inflammation and seeing some different things happen. And so they point to that
amazing.
constantly of like, this is like a weekend. This is before people were really losing any weight and there was still something happening. So they're kind of trying to dig into that right now and figure out what's going on.
There are some increasingly, I'm hearing critics of this type of medication who are coming out and saying, okay, well, it's still not attacking the fundamental problem, which has to do with diet and exercise. So what would you say to the folks who are saying, okay, wait a second, yes, it's good if it helps people lose weight, but at the end of the day, if those people don't change the habits that sometimes causes or can lead to obesity in some people, I'm not saying in all people, and we're still seeing eating processed foods, drinking sugary drinks, sodas, those sorts of things, does it end up still being healthier?
Right. I mean, just from talking to doctors and talking to patients, like one of the things that they say is these drugs, we talk about them a lot of times like it's a magic fix or like a magic pill, but they're just supposed to be a tool in the toolbox. And for people who have struggled with their weight, you know, who are extremely overweight, like these drugs can help jumpstart healthier habits, healthier lifestyle, gets them out of the cycle of, you know, being in this and like maybe, you know, losing 10 pounds can and sort of like retraining themselves to cook healthier and eat healthier can then change more habits. And I guess like that's sort of what I've heard from patients and doctors of this is a tool in the toolbox. It's not supposed to be a magic fix. People are supposed to learn better nutrition
not
and exercise
drug?
habits.
Not expected to be a forever drug for individuals or what?
That is still the question. Like we do know that when people go off of the drugs, they tend to gain the weight back, but not everyone does. Like I've talked to patients who have gained a little bit of weight back, but not all of it, or they haven't gained any weight back, and because they've been extremely diligent about their behaviors after going off of the drugs. And so that's still something that doctors are trying to figure out, and the pharmaceutical companies also are trying to make, you know, longer lasting drugs.
Okay, there's a lot we want to talk to you about, and we only have a few minutes left. So I want to touch on the story that you recently wrote about Eli Lilly spending some serious money to help increase the supply of its weight loss drug. What's the latest from Indiana?
Yeah, so Dave Ricks, the CEO of Eli Lilly, announced this morning that Lilly was investing another $5.3 billion to expand this manufacturing plant in Indiana. That's going to make the active ingredients that are, you know, used to make Mounjaro and Zepbound, the diabetes drug and the weight loss drug, which is, they said it's like the biggest manufacturing investment in the company's history, and they're an 150-year-old company, so that's you know,
a lot.
Pretty big. And they've already invested, I think, another 3.1 billion into this facility. So there's a lot of money going into this site in Indiana that's going to make different elements of the weight loss drugs, but it'll still take a couple of years for this site to actually start producing for the market, which is the issue. You know, they can pour as much cash as they want into ramping up production all over the world, but it takes about 3 to 4 years from the time of the announcement for those sites to actually start making the drugs. So it's still going to be a little while before, you know, the supply situation gets better.
Well, you know, I'm looking at, this is a company that's expected to have like 43 billion in revenue this year. It was 36 billion last year. So the ramp up, and I'm sure this is a big part of the play. You know, I have to say, when I look at these stories that you guys put out and that you put out, that Bloomberg Intelligence estimates that this could be an $80 billion market by 2030. We talk about billion-dollar drugs, right, that everybody aspires to. This is just kind of unbelievable and off the chart. One story, want to go there?
Yeah.
Hims and Hers. Can we talk about that? So what do we need to know about what they are doing?
Well, we wanted to know about the compounding pharmacy specifically, and like how they're able to do it, and what the risks associated with that are.
This is such an interesting area because it's really like compounding pharmacies have always been around. We use them, you know, if someone has an allergy to a certain dye in a medication, you can go to a compounding pharmacy and they can make the drug for you without that dye. Like that's sort of the purpose.
Right.
They're also supposed to help during drug shortages, but they're not supposed to be like drug manufacturers making drugs at the scale that the pharmaceutical companies do, because the FDA doesn't approve these drugs in the same way that it does generics or branded medications. So there's this little loophole that kind of is allowing these compounding pharmacies to do this, which is the fact that the drug shortages are so bad for Wegovy, Zepbound, Mounjaro, like across the board, all of these weight loss and diabetes drugs are in shortage. So the compounding pharmacies are allowed to do this, but it's happening at such a large scale right now, and there really isn't a good idea of how big this market is because no one's tracking it. The FDA doesn't really track it. State health departments, pharmacy boards aren't tracking it. But I know from talking to patients, doctors, even the pharmaceutical companies themselves, that just so many people are turning towards these compounded drugs now.
But is there oversight? We've only got about 20 seconds. Are
really.
the compounds safe?
That is sort of the question. It's happening at a scale that if they were unsafe, we would probably be hearing about issues, which is a little bit reassuring. But Lilly and Novo have tested the drugs and said that in some cases it's no more than sugar water, or they're, contain impurities that are would not actually put them in the same category as the drugs. They're different drugs. So it's a gamble what you're getting.
So you think you're getting X and you're actually getting Y.
And I've talked to doctors who say their patients get a bag of syringes instead of the actual pen that's used. So it's just a very different game.
All right. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Have a great weekend. Bloomberg News health reporter Madison Muller. She is on this beat in a big way.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Businessweek podcast. Listen live each weekday starting at 2 p.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. You can also listen live on Amazon Alexa from our flagship New York station. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Well, the Bloomberg Big Take yesterday, you might recall, it was about summer airline travel, how it will be busy and kind of messy. Travelers are and have been hitting the skies ahead of the Memorial Day weekend in what is expected to be the busiest one in over a decade, and that's ahead of a record year for summer travel. That's the forecast, Tim.
Well, with some of the trends she is seeing and how to make it what is expected to be a busy and messy summer travel season, how to make it a little less messy and maybe a little less expensive. We have with us Hayley Berg. She's back with us from Boston. She's lead economist over at Hopper. Hayley, good to have you with us. I'm wondering if you're also seeing the messiness in the data that you have at Hopper, because we had this great Bloomberg Big Take yesterday. The aviation team here at Bloomberg News, they took data from Cirium and they found that especially in the South and in Florida, we're seeing a lot of reduction this summer when it comes to airline seats. And what that means is, well, it's going to be more busy on those routes. And I'm wondering what you're seeing in your data over at Hopper.
Overall, we're seeing an expansion in capacity, about 1 million more seats departing over Memorial Day weekend, for example. But you're right, there's still optimization happening, which means that some of these routes do have fewer seats. The good news is that in terms of disruption, those things out of passengers' control on departure, we are seeing lower rates than we've seen in previous summers. But they do skyrocket by about 60% in the summer months because it's so busy. So you have to go into travel this summer prepared for disruption, but it won't be quite as bad as what we've seen before.
Prepare for destruction?
Disruption.
Oh, disruption.
Disruption.
Or...
I am wondering where you're seeing the expansion, what routes specifically, and where consumers can expect to see more flights.
We're continuing to see a lot of expansion transatlantic, especially at this time of the year when a lot of travelers are taking those longer bucket list trips, vacations while kids are out of school. But we're also seeing expansion on some of the most popular routes in the U.S., destinations that, the largest volume of travelers are interested in going. So those are going to be hub to hub, things like New York City to West Coast, or those Midwest, Central, Chicago, Minneapolis type destinations.
Carol and I were trying to get back from California a few weeks ago. And yes, we bought tickets a little late, and there was nothing left in terms of seats. It was pretty wild to see coming out of San Francisco and the Bay Area, trying to get back to New York. I mean, there were very few flights and there were no seats left. I'm wondering if that's something where we're going to see expansion.
One of the biggest ways airlines have managed their capacity the last couple of years coming out of COVID is by adding fewer planes, but increasing the number of seats on those planes. So swapping out a smaller jet for a larger one, and flying less frequently. So I'm not surprised that you might have seen fewer options than you might be used to. But then those load factors, the number of people booking tickets are going up because it's so busy. So I'm not surprised. I will say West Coast hubs to New York City in particular are always busy and always expensive. So probably some luck of the draw there too.
What are we seeing when it comes to pricing? And I'm curious, first of all, with airline pricing, you talked a little bit about it. Really, are prices coming down at all? Or how much?
They are. On domestic routes, they are down. Take Memorial Day weekend, for example, average fares are down almost 10% year over year. So huge improvement. Travelers this long weekend paid around $300 a ticket. International routes, it's a mixed bag. Europe is seeing a lot of price improvement. Prices are down about 10% from last year, but still about 10% higher than pre-pandemic. And Asia is expensive as ever, still about 30 to 60% more expensive.
When you say Asia, what's the hot spot? Where's everybody going in Asia?
I'm guessing Japan.
Japan.
Oh, I was right.
We've seen almost double the share of searches to Japan from the U.S.
We're all raising our hands on air because one of our producers just went to
Exactly.
Japan.
That's what I was thinking. Sebastian.
I think it was Oh, yeah. No, but Elizabeth.
Oh, yeah. Also
right?
Elizabeth. Yeah, everybody's going to Japan.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Hayley.
Japan is the place to be. Increasing demand. It's where a lot of the international capacity has come back the most. It's one of the most searched for destinations for summer. Airfare will cost you about $1,400, though. So it's an expensive trip.
Wow.
That's in the back of the plane, too, Carol.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Hotel prices. Now, Tim and I, too, we had a work trip. We were in San Francisco. Mind you, there was a big conference going on.
Yeah, it was during the RSA conference, which is like just takes over the entire city.
So getting a hotel room, we were just lucky. And it was in actually a very nice place. But it was, I don't even want to say it on air, super expensive. Just there for one night because we had to do, we were doing a live broadcast. What's going on with hotel pricing?
Hotel prices are still higher than they were pre-pandemic, but they have not continued to increase over the last 2-3 years. So there was a big bump up when people started doing staycations after COVID. So prices are flat relative to last year and the year before, but the burn in the wallet is definitely a little bit greater. This long weekend, about $215 per night. Summer prices on average are about the same. But if you're going to hotspots like New York City, Miami, Las Vegas, you'll be paying significantly more than that.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about some travel tips and when people can get the cheapest flights, because that's the bread and butter for you guys over at Hopper. You take all this data, you analyze it, and you try to come up with actionable things that your customers can do to find the best and cheapest flights. So when should we be buying tickets?
If you're taking a domestic trip this summer, 1 to 3 months in advance is going to be the sweet spot. So think about it this way. If you're taking a trip in June or July and you haven't booked your airfare yet, you should be booking it now. If you're traveling later in August, early September, which is a pro tip, airfare will be cheaper in those months, then you have maybe a few more weeks. But those international trips, if you have not booked them yet, book them now. Prices for summer are already higher than the rest of the year, and you're running a little bit late. So book those international summer trips now.
I have to say, I had to bring, my daughter's coming home from London, and I kind of waited, of course, late on everything. It was expensive. It was a combination of cash and miles, but I was like, and it's just one way.
Wasn't pretty?
Yeah, it wasn't pretty. It's a good thing I love her.
She's worth it.
It's a good thing I love her because we're going to bring her home.
And is September domestic? We're not too late? Asking
You're
for
not
myself?
too late for September.
Okay.
And here's the real big money saving tip.
Tim's got some plans.
Whether you're going international or domestic, if possible, travel in September instead of June, July, or August. Not only will there be fewer people on your plane, fewer tourists, you will save about 30% on your airfare and hotel stays. So it pays to push off your vacation.
And it does also pay to take the first flight of the day. I think about that a lot for work or for play.
Do it all the time.
I want to be there early. I want to get out before either delays. That does make sense. Just got about 20 seconds left here. It's smart to do that.
Yeah. If you depart after 8 or 10 a.m., you're 2 times more likely to be delayed or canceled on departure. You're likely to get stuck in long security lines. take the first flight of the day whenever possible and increase your chances of getting onto your destination on time.
Now, if you're Charlie Pellet, you actually want to be delayed or kicked to another flight or be offered up a ticket because he is known for doing
Get that $1,200, airline credit.
Exactly.
If you've got time, it's a great way to get a little extra travel budget.
He builds it in. He builds it in sometimes like an extra day, so he has that option. Hayley, thank you so much. Have a great long holiday weekend. Hayley Berg, lead economist over at Hopper from Boston.
You know who told me a few years ago to do the early flight? Paul Sweeney was
Did he really?
always take the first flight out.
I always think
and I
about
started to do that. He's right.
Like you don't get traffic to the airport. You just get there and you just
And then
go.
you get to your destination early. You can have a full day.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Businessweek podcast. Catch us live weekday afternoons from 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern. Listen on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Or watch us live on YouTube.
Big news in the crypto world yesterday. The industry closer to another landmark after the SEC paved the way for the eventual launch of the first U.S. ETFs that invest directly in Ether. The SEC signed off on Thursday on a proposal by venues run by Cboe Global Markets, NASDAQ, the New York Stock Exchange, to list products tied to the second biggest digital asset. So the big question that I have, Carol, is will it unleash a rally in Ether similar to the one we saw in Bitcoin after the spot ETFs started trading?
All right, well, let's see what our guest has to say about that. Stephen McClurg is with us, head of U.S. asset management at the digital asset alternatives manager CoinShares. He's back with us from Nashville, Tennessee. Stephen, hope you're well. Good to have you back with us. So Ether ETF, are you anticipating that we'll see some kind of pop as a result?
Yeah, hi, Carol and Tim. Thanks so much for having me back. It looks like we've already seen the pop from the news. I do expect a pop in Ether and other cryptocurrencies, as well as Bitcoin, just due to the cycle that we're in. We just had the Bitcoin halving, and I do expect Bitcoin prices to triple over the next 18 months after that halving, and other currencies tend to follow closely.
Triple? You expect Bitcoin prices to triple over the next year? 18 months, I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Well, the next 18 months, yeah.
Why?
That's a lot.
Why?
That's a lot.
It's a lot. Well, we're just seeing the beginnings of funds flowing into the Bitcoin spot ETF. We didn't get the big wall of money. I mean, there was a lot. It was the biggest ETF launch of all time across 10 different ETFs, but it wasn't a massive wall of money of everybody that was ready to come in. A lot of financial advisors, insurance companies, even pension funds are looking at investing in Bitcoin in various ways. And they want to wait and do a certain amount of due diligence on the ETF, on the currency itself, and on managers over the next 2 to 3 years.
But
so,
can I ask you? So, is the tripling? Is it just because if you see a lot of demand and there's more money all of a sudden coming in? Is it just supply demand, and that means people are trading in and out of it, and that's why the price goes up so much? It's because there is a limited amount, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's a limited amount of Bitcoin, and the rewards from mining have actually been cut in half just in the last month. So that means that less Bitcoin is available to come into the market. So that demand is high where supply has gotten very low.
So it's just a trade, and people buying it, selling it, and that's what keeps the price going up, correct?
That's absolutely right.
Okay. So
Well,
it's
to
kinda
that,
like a toy. That's what it sounds like.
Look, I'm going to build on what you just said, Carol, to ask my next question, because critics out there still say that even Bitcoin, which is the biggest cryptocurrency out there, it doesn't have any fundamental underlying value. There's always this joke about cash flows and lack of cash flows because it doesn't have cash flows. But it also, unlike gold, isn't used in jewelry or in circuitry, so there's no utility there. What would you say to critics who say this is still pure speculation and it has no place in my portfolio?
Yeah, money has always had value based on what people have assigned to it. So even gold, very little of the actual gold supply is used for things like jewelry and circuitry. Most of it is used as money and has been since, the history of the world.
But wait, is it
Same
really
thing with the
money?
US dollar.
You say it's money, but you really can't transact with it easily.
In a lot of places.
Yeah, it's not
Not
broadly
anymore.
accepted. No. Come on,
It's not El Salvador.
Yeah, and even that's limited.
Yeah, no, I mean you are seeing more transactions, and again, even from the monetary side, it's things have value based on what people put into it. So, dollars, for instance, nothing's backing the dollar. It's just a bunch of paper with.
But the U.S.
numbers on
government,
it.
the U.S. government is backing the dollar.
Yeah.
How do they back the? How does the U.S. government back the dollar?
Well, they used to use gold. They don't
nothing
use
behind
that anymore because we're not on a gold standard. But the U.S. government stands behind. It's the official currency of the United States.
Yeah, but what's given the dollar value in the last 50 years is the fact that other governments have given it value, and it is very quickly losing even that value as well. So,
okay, but to look at it from a different perspective, to Carol's point, when I walk into a Sweetgreen, for example, to buy a salad, the price is given to me in dollars. It's not given to me in Bitcoin at this point.
well, yeah, and that's absolutely right. And by the way, there's hundreds of currencies across the globe, most of them issued by countries, but Bitcoin has become a standard for country exchange. Whether and it's slow and it's very small right now, but the speculation today is that in the future, a decade from now, it will be, and it will be a currency that's used by other people. So again, I agree with the argument that it's not heavily used as a currency today, but the speculation is that it will be more so in the future. It is used to a certain extent today. But as it grows as a global currency, it's going to have a lot more value.
What are you hearing? You have a great background. You were formerly a strategist over at Guggenheim Securities. You've looked at the markets more broadly. You've looked at what investors are interested in. I'm getting ready to do something with the folks over at BNY and Mellon, their Insight event. And, we're going to be talking about all kinds of assets, alt assets, including crypto in a portfolio. A lot of this stuff gains traction when investors are interested in. And you talk about the doubling or tripling of Bitcoin because of that investor interest. I mean, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? Who specifically, in terms of the institutional investors that increasingly are interested in the crypto space?
Yeah, and by the way, I'll see you at Insight. It's in Nashville this year. So,
cool.
One of my favorite events for the last probably 15 years. But and you said it. I come from more the boring bond side of the business. Managing bond portfolios, and I really look at crypto in a lot of the same ways that I used to look at bonds. I focus more on the asset-backed security side of things, but the interest right now really comes in no different than in 2008, 2009, when there was a big move to put gold in portfolios because there was this fear of inflation coming with all of the money printing. And that fear continues. Inflation is high. I just saw, data today showing, that in the last, just in the last 2 years, food costs have gone up 20%, energy costs have gone up 25%. And people are looking for places to hold value that isn't in dollars, that isn't in currencies that can be printed into inflation. So a lot of the demand actually comes in, whether it's anti-inflationary, or it's demand due to the fact that there's a belief that in the future it will hold more value and be more readily utilized.
It's interesting. Hey, Stephen, I want to go back to the Ether ETFs here because that was the big news yesterday. And if we do end up seeing them, it's by no means a sure thing at this point. It's not 100% guaranteed. If we do end up seeing them, I'm wondering where that fits into a person's portfolio since there already is access to digital assets when it comes to the spot Bitcoin ETFs. Is there enough room for the second largest digital currency?
Yeah, I think right now, people are making bets that, okay, as a global currency, Bitcoin is probably the winner, and that's where a lot of demand is coming from, from the wirehouses and institutional investors. They've looked at Bitcoin, they've thought about it, they've said, okay, this is a currency, more of an outward currency, whereas ETH is actually more of a currency within the Ethereum blockchain. And one of the really important things about Ethereum is that the way that network works is if you hold those digital tokens, you can actually stake it back to the network and do things like vote and participate in the network and earn a total return. So when I think about Ethereum, I think about the total return of the
Right.
opportunity, not just the price appreciation. The problem with the Ethereum ETF is that it's not allowing for staking rewards.
Right.
So a lot of people that
That's
already
interesting.
own ETH, so a lot of people that already own
Okay.
Bitcoin move their assets into the Bitcoin spot ETF.
Right.
But people that own ETH are earning 3.5% on their ETH.
Steve-
They're not going to move it into an ETF.
Steve, we got to wrap. Have a great weekend. Thanks for spending some time with us. Stephen McClurg, he's head of U.S. asset management over at CoinShares.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no.
Who's gonna drive you home?
Honey, please, I'll do the driving.
Drive on.
Excuse me, I want to drive.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the Drive to the Close
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, everybody, just about 18 minutes left in today's trading session. The one and only Bill Maloney just giving a rundown of the markets
man.
along with Charlie.
The myth.
NVIDIA,
The
though,
legend.
another all-time high today.
Yeah. Post earnings.
Post earnings.
Incredible.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It continues. The overall market trade, though, as we were just all hearing from the team, flat on the Dow, just up about 0.6% on the S&P, and the Nasdaq 100 up almost 1%. But I'm looking at the numbers overall for the past 5 days. We might see a gain in the Nasdaq.
I want to go back to Jensen Huang at NVIDIA. He's now the 17th wealthiest person in the world with a net worth of $91.3 billion. Yesterday, he surpassed all members of the Walton family, the heirs to the Walmart fortune. Together, the Walton
Climbing
family
that
is still
list.
wealthier.
Yeah.
However, as individuals, they're not. This according to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index. It's remarkable stuff.
NVIDIA up almost 15% for the week overall. So, yeah, it's been a banner week, certainly for him and anybody who's been a bull on that name. And it seems like there's a ton of you out there. Let's get to it. Let's see what Nancy Prial has to say. It is time for our Drive to the Close guest. She is Co-Chief Executive Officer and Senior Portfolio Manager at Essex Investment Management. She joins us from Chicago. Nancy, good to have you here with us. There's NVIDIA and then there's the market, it feels like. But how do you see it and how have you been thinking about it?
Yeah, that is very much how we see it. Obviously, a lot of attention focused on AI. And really very narrowly AI. And, certainly, NVIDIA's results were just spectacular. And they certainly have some great growth prospects. But it's not just NVIDIA. And we have to step back and remember, one, the path of disruptive technology and what generally happens right now. We've had what they call the innovation trigger. And we're getting into the excitement, higher expectations. Eventually, we'll end up at the peak of high expectations, and then we'll see how fast things deploy. And what we're seeing as a result, though, of all of this excitement over NVIDIA and AI, or I should say AI and then NVIDIA, is that other parts of the market are being crowded out. And we think that is a shame. There are so many really, really tremendous growth opportunities in the market.
Right.
Whether there's some of the more obvious ones, like the backdoor play on data centers with industrials, plays on the reshoring and manufacturing, or less obvious ones like all of the innovation that's going on in healthcare. We think investors should start looking there for the newer opportunities.
Well, let's go into it because your specialty and your portfolio manager for the micro, small, and some of the growth strategies within that world. And just to be fair, let me just look up. You've got the S&P 500 up about 11% so far this year. You've got same story for about the NASDAQ 100, almost 12%. If I pull up small caps as measured by the Russell 2000, and you're looking at a gain of not even 2%. So definitely we know they've been the underperformers here. So when you go into the small cap space, tell us what you find industry. I know you shared with our team some of the names that you like. Montrose Environmental, ticker's MEG. It's about a $1.3 billion market cap. Walk us through the investment scenario for that one.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, we really like the industrials area. It's a big weighting in our portfolios. We think there are a lot of tailwinds behind these industrial companies. We particularly like companies that are focused on environmental remediation. And that's what Montrose Environmental is about. One of their areas of specialty is remediation for forever chemicals, what's called PFAS, PFAS. That is benefiting not only from some increased realization of the dangers of these PFAS in all of our drinking water supplies, but also some help from government that's funding the remediation work that needs to take care of it. So we like MEG Montrose in that space. We also like a somewhat larger cap company, Clean Harbors, CLH, that's also a player in that space.
Yeah, they're about an $11.5 billion company.
Can I ask you, Montrose is up about almost 50% this year. You think that there's more room to run here?
We do. I mean, the valuation is reasonable. It's not dirt cheap anymore, but it's reasonable. It's about 18 times EBITDA. Growth rates are accelerating. They're beating, they're raising numbers. And this PFAS remediation is just beginning. This is a multi-year cycle. I mean, every water system in this country is impacted by these. And they're very bad for people's health. And so they're going to have to relay pipes. They're going to have to do water treatment. There's a lot of work that's going to be done to clean up this problem.
Yeah, it's something we've talked about quite a bit on our program, and it's incredibly disturbing to, in recent years, find out about all this.
Yeah.
I'm wondering.
Right. I mean, I think the municipalities have known for a long time.
Good point. Okay, let's talk about some of the
that's
other...
reassuring.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's move on.
To be continued.
To be continued. I do want to talk about some of the other companies that you have in your list in the small caps because, like Carol said, not household names, not companies we talk about. And like you said, it's more than just NVIDIA out there.
Right. Is there one in particular you'd like to
I want to talk about Patrick Industries.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Patrick Industries is one of our favorite names in the portfolio. They are an Indiana-based company. They participate in a number of end markets. So they make components to go into these end markets. And their main end markets today are manufactured housing, recreational vehicles, and boats, motor yachts. And then they've just recently got into some of these smaller sports equipments like ski-doos and snowmobiles and ATVs. They are a combination of organic growth as well as growth by acquisition. So they are consolidating a business that has a lot of small players. It's a company with just an incredibly solid management team, off the beaten track. But what we see year in and year out is they gain content. So even as we go through cycles in their end markets, they gain content consistently. Margins have been improving. The balance sheet keeps improving. Stock is very inexpensively valued at about 11 times earnings that are not peak earnings. So we think that this stock has a lot of room to run, if I could use that expression with this. The other thing is, if you think about what some of the well-known speakers are saying about what's going to happen to the work week over the next period of time with the advent of AI, certainly Jamie Dimon has posited that we may be on a 4-day work week. If that's true, people will spend more time on leisure activities, and they'll be buying the toys that Patrick supplies into.
Okay, so if we're not working on Fridays, we're going boating. We're going water skiing.
Exactly.
Who was it that talked about, was it Ken Griffin or golf clubs? No, who was it?
Mets owner. Was it the Mets owner? Cohen.
Steve
Cohen.
Cohen.
That's right. Yeah. Steve Cohen,
Yeah.
right, about thinking about people. Thank you, Paul Brennan, our producer.
Thanks, Paul.
That idea of like investing in those areas because people are going to have like extra free time because they won't be at the office so much.
You know what? It's Friday afternoon, the Friday
We're
before
here.
Memorial Day.
Tim's here.
We're here.
My team's there.
Nancy's there.
Have a good weekend.
Yep.
Nancy Prial, Co-Chief Executive Officer, Senior Portfolio Manager at Essex Investment Management there in Chicago.
This is the Bloomberg Businessweek podcast, available on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Listen live weekday afternoons from 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern on Bloomberg.com, the iHeartRadio app, TuneIn, and the Bloomberg Business app. You can also watch us live every weekday on YouTube and always on the Bloomberg Terminal.